ladies and gentlemen. It is my great honor actually to come to address so many students here. I seldom have a chance to talk to such a large number of students. Usually when I work, I engage small groups, small communities, because that is the most direct way of interaction. But I hope today I can interact with you through my speech, and if you have any questions, do come to the forum later on, and I'm more than welcome, to answer any questions. Okay, for those who do not know Urban Renewal Authority in Hong Kong, I can tell you that it is a public organization handling urban regeneration in Hong Kong. I was the former MD, but I left it last year, in last June. So what I'm going to talk about is valid till June 2015. I don't know what exactly they're doing now. I hope they're doing the same good old things. But what I'm addressing today, in fact, are the key things that Urban Renewal Authority has been doing for a number of years. For those who come from elsewhere, you probably would think that Hong Kong is such a great city. There should not be any regeneration problem. Why do we need urban renewal? Because we do have urban decay. For a city of like Hong Kong, 150 years old, we have buildings which are mostly built after the war. And many of these buildings, again, unlike other cities, we are of relatively high density, and we are mostly reinforced concrete. So if you come from a place where your houses are built by stone or brick or even log, you can easily or more easily maintain it. And secondly, because usually you live in your own home, but in Hong Kong, many of our flats are subdivided. If you come from Hong Kong, you know about Tong Fong or Ban Gan Fong. We have these in our old tenement buildings, very common. And all these add up to the problems of the building conditions. So if I quote you some figures, you will understand why we do have urban decay problem in Hong Kong. We are talking about building conditions and living conditions. In terms of age, I'm sorry, could I have the lights dim a little bit? It shines right into my eyes. Thanks. I can't see you. I really want to see you. Thank you very much. Yeah. For 50-year or older buildings in Hong Kong, domestic buildings, 50 years or older, so they are after World War II, they were built. There are around 6,000 buildings of that age. About 42% of them are in poor conditions. Okay, so there are about 2,800 buildings of that age which are in poor or very building conditions. If we enlarge this population, this building population, we are talking about 30 years or older, right? 30 years or older, that includes the 50-year and older vintage. 30 years or older, we have 20,000 of these buildings. And out of these 20,000, in fact, about 30% are poor or very in building conditions. So it is about 5,700 buildings of that poor conditions. So let's ask ourselves, I mentioned that just now, but let's ask ourselves again, why our buildings are so poorly maintained? Well, first of all, I must say, in the after the war, while we have baby booms, we also have lots of immigrants. So there was a need for more housing. So at that time, there was a rush for building tenement buildings. So the building workmanship, the building materials, and if you remember, back in the 1960s, in Hong Kong, we have serious water shortage. None of you would have experienced that. But back in the 60s, for a few years, we actually have the water supply once in 4 days. So if you're building buildings at that time, how do you mix the concrete? You can't afford to have fresh water, right? So you use seawater. And that really corrodes the steels. So that the building design and material makes it weak. And secondly, because of our multiple ownership. I don't think any of you, or maybe some of you, I'm sorry, actually own a whole building. But no, we usually own or rent just a flat out of the building, right? So we have multiple ownership of one building. That means nobody actually can maintain the common parts without the agreement of the other owners. And so you need an owner corporation. But many of our buildings actually built before the 80s, they seldom have owner corporation. And without that setup, without that institutional setup, it's very difficult to come together and maintain the common parts of the building. So even if you maintain your own flat very well, but if the external wall is leaking, nobody can help you unless you come together, join forces to maintain it. So lack of management and maintenance is the crucial problem actually for our concrete buildings. And then there is also this problem of subdivision. And mostly they are illegal subdivisions. For a flat of 600 square feet originally, they are subdivided into 3 flats or even 4 flats. They put in the drains, the toilets, the kitchen. Of course, all of them mostly are unauthorized. So no authorized, no proper setup was built in. And so you have further leakage problem. All these add to the structural problem of the building, and you have lots of concrete scoring. Those things, if you can resolve it at the beginning, it's not difficult to resolve. But if you leave it for many years, for 20 years, you may as well redevelop it. And last but not the least, for buildings of those conditions, because they are run down, usually it is of cheaper rental. And there comes the social problem. And you sometimes actually have lots of these, I don't know if you know the Chinese name, you know, all these sex business, renting these little subdivided flats and do their business. So if you form a proper family, a normal family, living in such buildings, there's nowhere you can escape. They would live with you in the same building. And also because they are cheap, even the shops themselves, sometimes they are in back lanes or cul-de-sacs. So even the shop rental is cheap. And so there comes the car repairing workshop or other metal workshop or other things. So residential neighborhood is being infiltrated by all these incompatible uses. So all these we term it as urban decay problem. It is not the most satisfactory building conditions, not the most satisfactory living conditions. But of course, the first thing would come to our mind, of course, is to rehabilitate them, right? Trying to renovate them back to a good building condition. Urban Renewal Authority, being the public organization responsible for urban regeneration in Hong Kong, they run a few of these very useful building rehabilitation schemes. They don't dish out money. No, that is not the objective. The most important objective is to render technical support. That means trying to get the owners together, help them to come up with a renovation scheme, hire a good authorized person, and then tender out for a proper contractor. If you just leave the owners, the small owners, to do things like that, it is actually a very big burden to them. And sometimes you will fall into the trap of this tender rigging thing. If you know in the local scene, sometimes you hear about build, that's tender rigging, okay? So you can't get a good price, a proper supervision for your rehabilitation program. So this public organization, called Urban Renewal Authority, helps the owners to come together and rehabilitate the buildings. That, in fact, is the most sustainable way of regenerating the urban scene, right? Because people do not have to move out, and they can have better living conditions. But something is missing. Can you resolve those illegal structure? Can you resolve those social problems if you just rehabilitate? No, you can't. Some of the buildings, even if you have the normal amount of money for each household, you may spend 30,000, 40,000 Hong Kong dollars. but it is not enough for a real upgrading of the building. What we call it is something beyond economic repair, particularly those buildings I mentioned, 50 years or older, which are in poor conditions. If you really want these buildings to be rehabilitated to a very good standard, some of them may have to spend 200,000 Hong Kong dollars per flat. So how can these little or small owners of these old flats afford to do that? So many of them would rather have their flats redeveloped. But again, they are small owners. How do they know how to redevelop? It is such a professional job. So sometimes they wait for the private developers to come and acquire their flats, so that when the developer can acquire all the interest, they can redevelop. But private sector, their whole mission, their whole motive behind is profit, right? If there is no profit, they won't come to redevelop that site. So that is why the government, knowing that there are urban decay problems which has to be tackled by redevelopment, the government set up this statutory authority called Urban Renewal Authority, and they do redevelopment also. So they have these regulations for them. The law allows them to designate a place as a public interest. That's very important. If it is not for public interest, why should the government use public money and public order, statutory order, to redevelop a site? You are actually talking about acquiring people's interests, property interests, right? Inviting these people to move out, that is the most gentle way of saying it, and then redevelop the site. So public interest is the most important concept in redevelopment by Urban Renewal Authority. So when we look at redevelopment, how can we do it in a sustainable way? Sustainability, as we usually describe it as a three-pronged approach: social, economic, and environmental consideration. And in redevelopment, because we are talking about not just the buildings themselves, for redevelopment we are talking about many people, business, families inside these buildings. So I would say environmental consideration is not the most difficult part, because upon redevelopment, you have all the experts to help you to come to a good design. I can talk about that later. But I would like to share with you the most difficult part of redevelopment, the social part, the social consideration, because you're talking about property interest, you're talking about the daily life of people, people going to school in the neighborhood, people going to work, people going to see doctors in the district. So how can you ask people to move out of their buildings? And also business. In Hong Kong, you realize that no matter how old your buildings are, so long as the streets are vibrant, the shops are vibrant, they can do good business. So why should they sell their properties to URA, for your redevelopment? So social consideration is most important to handle. So we have come to certain principles for Urban Renewal Authority to do urban redevelopment sustainably. On the social consideration, you must have a fair and transparent compensation policy, so that everybody knows that if they are affected by redevelopment, they don't have to be worried. Unlike private sector, if somebody knocks on your door and would like to buy your property, then you might feel that, well, maybe I will be cheated, right? But for a public organization, because everything is transparent and there is a formula, so no matter how old your buildings are, everybody, whichever floor, whichever orientation, you will enjoy the same amount of unit rate. Of course, larger the flat, more compensation you have. And this unit rate, in fact, is much higher than the market value. So they feel that they will not be cheated by anyone, or there is no favoritism. Not that the MD, you will get more. No, everybody is the same. So fair compensation is very important, and transparent policy. Rehousing, the tenants themselves, because they are because they don't have too much money in their hand, right? So for Urban Renewal Authority, they actually get the help of housing authority and housing society. So for tenants, if they are eligible, they can actually, I would say, jump the queue and move into public rental housing flats so that they can really resolve their living conditions problem for good. There are other considerations that we have to handle. People would think, even if I sell the property to you, I have a lump sum in my hand. Of course, I have the freedom to choose flats in the market, but I actually would really want to come back to live in this particular building in future upon redevelopment, right? So we think of other policies such as flat for flat, 樓換樓. But original concept, people when they ask for 樓換樓, flat for flat, they would actually want an old flat in exchange for a new flat. But that compensation level is too high for our formula, because our formula it is talking about an old flat for a sum of money which is equivalent to about a 7-year-old building, the price of that building, of that flat. So 7-year-old flat as against a new flat is different. So, but we still think that, yeah, maybe they do have a valid reason, because for them, they may be living here for 50 years. So they would like to come back right into this building, into this district to live. Fine. But how can we control the price? Because the market may change, right? If you come back at the end, after the building is completed, 5-6 years down the road, how can you ensure that they will get a flat at that time? So we develop other policies. They can actually, after getting the compensation, cash compensation, they can actually get this choice to lock in a price of the future flat. So you are talking about buying a flat which is not there yet at a price that they agree, right? And then in future, after the building is completed, even if the building, the prices are much higher than what they agree, we will still stick with the old price. So that is how we try on the social side to make sure that the people who have a valid justification can actually come back to live. And also for special trades, like some of the market trades, the fresh food, some of these, some of you may know the wedding card. We promise that when we buy their flats or buy their shops, they can come back to operate. But for these shops, they have to pay a market rent at that time. We also promise and we also plan a lot of government and social facilities in the new development in future, trying to build community back into this disturbed place. Because we know that community building at the end of the day is more important than just the building itself, because people live, they don't just come back to their own flat, they would like to come back to a community. So all these types of considerations are built into our redevelopment plans. Later on, if I have a chance in the forum, I can actually talk about the high-tech redevelopment that we built ourselves. URA built on the road, and we put in a lot of these community building elements into that into that development. I come to the environmental side. As I just said, it's very easy because we have many good environmental management people around us. We have good architects, so we try to input their expertise. We try to put our site plan to such a design that we allow even better ventilation than before to the neighborhood itself. So better ventilation for the neighborhood. We can try to abate noise. Sometimes we can redevelop commercial building right next to highways so that even residential buildings, existing residential buildings can benefit. We look at flat design. Just now I talked about the site plan. We also look at flat design, the flat itself. We encourage a lot of cross ventilation within our flats. by planning the layout, by planning the orientation. We also, in the new development, we would not allow any more incompatible uses, such as car repairing workshop, such as, I mentioned other socially incompatible uses. Economics, perhaps is the most difficult part, I must say. At the end of the day, when the new development is finished, how much do you sell? Market price. So when the market is up, everybody is saying that, wow, URA is selling super expensive flats. But that is something that has to do with the financial arrangement of the public organization. We are self-sufficient. URA is supposed to be a financially self-sufficient organization. So they have to sell it at the market, sell the land at a market value. And so the developer, at the end of the day, will have to sell the flats at market value. But we have done something recently. We try to make sure that even when the developers are on board, we ask them to try to design flats which are of more modest design. Hopefully, through this modest design, we can sort of control the market value. What is modest design? In fact, we don't cook it out ourselves. We do a couple of forums with professionals, surveyors, architects, engineers, property management people, and we also do some street survey, asking people who want to buy houses and ask them, what do you have in mind? For modest design, we call it, in fact in Chinese is 實而不華, practical but not luxurious, right? So what are they? In fact, some of them, they actually tell us very specifically. For example, the flat, the room itself should at least accommodate a bed. I would say, if you come from elsewhere in a foreign city, you must be alarmed by such a humble request. In a bedroom, you can't put a bed, but that's very normal in Hong Kong. You have so small bedrooms that sometimes the bed will have to rely on the the extra space in front of the window, to make up the space for the bed. So we in URA project, we said very humble, we must have one side of the wall in a bedroom to be 2.1 meter long. But it is very useful. Once you put such a requirement in the brief, developers will have to honor it, right? So in future, the rooms can accommodate normal beds. And secondly, no luxurious clubs. Don't put up all these swimming pools, luxurious gyms. Try to keep it humble. Just make sure that people have activity space, have a lot of community interaction, but we don't want high management fee, no swimming pool in small sites. Okay, so all these, we try to put it into the flat design in order to influence the price. But at the end of the day, of course, the market will dictate. But as you can see, urban regeneration is not simple at all. If you come from a private sector angle, it is relatively simple because you have only one benchmark, that is profit. Higher the profit, more successful your development is. But for a public organization, that is not the only benchmark. How you satisfy the community, how you satisfy the business, at the end of the day, people will tell you. Thank you very much.